Question 1. Stakeholder feedback indicates that some traders in the Ontario securities market are executing short sales without adequately confirming the availability of the securities to be borrowed. A junior trader at a Toronto-based firm is presented with a client order to sell short 1,000 shares of XYZ Corp. The trader believes XYZ Corp. is a widely traded stock and assumes the shares will be easy to borrow. What is the most appropriate course of action for the trader to ensure compliance with Ontario securities regulations regarding locates and borrows? Option A. Execute the short sale immediately, assuming the shares are readily available in the market, and address any borrowing issues later if they arise. Option B. Execute the short sale and then immediately begin searching for a broker-dealer willing to lend the shares. Option C. Ask a senior trader for a quick verbal confirmation that XYZ Corp. shares are generally available for borrowing before executing the trade. Option D. Contact at least 2 different broker-dealers known to be active in the securities lending market to inquire about the availability of 1,000 shares of XYZ Corp. for borrowing. Correct answer is D. Contact at least 2 different broker-dealers known to be active in the securities lending market to inquire about the availability of 1,000 shares of XYZ Corp. for borrowing. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a securities trader to balance the immediate need for a security to meet a client's order with the regulatory obligation to ensure a locate is properly executed. The pressure to fulfill client requests quickly can lead to shortcuts, but failing to adhere to locate requirements can result in significant regulatory penalties and damage to the firm's reputation. The core of the challenge lies in understanding the nuances of the locate rule and applying it diligently even when time is of the essence. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves the trader initiating a good faith effort to locate the shares by contacting at least 2 different broker-dealers known to be involved in the securities lending market. This approach directly addresses the regulatory requirement for a locate, demonstrating a diligent effort to find the shares before executing the short sale. FINRA Rule 5250, Payments for Market Making, and related guidance emphasize the importance of a bona fide locate. This proactive step ensures compliance by confirming the availability of shares for borrowing, thereby preventing potential failures to deliver. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves executing the short sale immediately based on a verbal assurance from a single, unverified source that the shares are available. This fails to meet the good faith requirement of the locate rule. A single, unverified source does not constitute a diligent effort, and the trader has not taken reasonable steps to confirm the availability of the shares. This could lead to a failure to deliver and a violation of settlement rules. Another incorrect approach is to rely on the assumption that the shares are readily available in the market without any active search. This passive approach completely bypasses the locate requirement. The locate rule is designed to prevent the creation of artificial short positions and to ensure that securities are actually available for borrowing, not just presumed to be. A third incorrect approach is to execute the short sale and then attempt to locate the shares afterward. This reverses the required process. The locate must be performed before executing the short sale. Attempting to locate after the fact is a clear violation of the spirit and letter of the locate rule and does not mitigate the initial noncompliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach short selling with a clear understanding of the locate requirements. The decision-making process should prioritize regulatory compliance. When faced with an order requiring a short sale, the trader must first determine if a locate has been performed. If not, the trader must initiate a good faith effort to locate the shares by contacting multiple, reliable sources within the securities lending market. The execution of the short sale should only occur after a successful locate has been confirmed. This systematic approach ensures that client needs are met responsibly and within regulatory boundaries. Question 2. Stakeholder feedback indicates that an ADF market maker in Australian equities has observed a sudden and significant increase in trading volume and price volatility for a particular stock, deviating substantially from its historical patterns. The firm's internal risk assessment suggests a potential for further price dislocation and increased counterparty risk. What is the most appropriate course of action for the ADF market maker to ensure compliance with a SIC regulatory framework for ADF market makers in New South Wales? Option A. Attempt to profit from the observed price dislocation by adjusting quotes aggressively to capture potential arbitrage opportunities. Option B. Continue quoting prices with significantly widened bid-ask spreads to reflect the increased risk, without informing the market operator or a SIC. Option C. Immediately report the unusual trading activity and the firm's risk assessment findings to the ASX market operator and a SIC, while simultaneously implementing predefined, objective risk mitigation strategies that are designed to be non-disruptive to overall market function. Option D. Cease quoting prices for the affected stock until the volatility subsides to protect the firm from potential losses. The correct answer is C. Immediately report the unusual trading activity and the firm's risk assessment findings to the ASX market operator and a SIC, while simultaneously implementing predefined, objective risk mitigation strategies that are designed to be non-disruptive to overall market function. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an ADF market maker to balance the immediate need for liquidity with the regulatory obligation to maintain fair and orderly markets, especially when faced with unusual trading activity. The core tension lies in the potential for a firm's own actions, driven by risk assessment, to inadvertently exacerbate market instability or create an unfair advantage. Careful judgment is required to ensure compliance with the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, a SIC, regulatory framework governing ADF market makers. The best approach involves a proactive and transparent engagement with the market operator and a SIC. This includes immediately reporting the unusual trading patterns and the firm's risk assessment findings, while simultaneously implementing predefined, objective risk mitigation strategies that are designed to be non-disruptive to overall market function. This approach is correct because it prioritizes regulatory compliance by adhering to the principles of market integrity and fair dealing. It demonstrates a commitment to transparency and cooperation with regulators, which is a cornerstone of a SIC oversight. By communicating the risk assessment and the rationale behind any trading adjustments, the firm acts responsibly and ethically, ensuring that its actions are justifiable and aligned with the goal of maintaining an orderly market. An incorrect approach would be to unilaterally cease quoting prices or significantly widen bid-ask spreads without prior consultation or clear justification based on objective market conditions. This could be interpreted as a failure to meet the obligations of an ADF market maker to provide continuous and competitive quotations, potentially leading to market fragmentation and reduced liquidity, which is contrary to the objectives of a SIC market integrity rules. Another incorrect approach would be to continue quoting prices without any adjustment, despite a clear and present risk assessment indicating potential for significant losses or market disruption. This demonstrates a disregard for prudent risk management and could expose the firm and the market to undue volatility, violating the duty of care expected of market participants. Finally, an approach that involves attempting to profit from the unusual trading activity by exploiting perceived market inefficiencies without considering the broader impact on market stability or regulatory obligations would be ethically and regulatorily unsound. This prioritizes self-interest over market integrity and could lead to enforcement action by a SIC. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of their regulatory obligations as an ADF market maker. This includes recognizing the duty to maintain fair and orderly markets. When faced with unusual trading activity, the first step should be to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, considering both the firm's exposure and the potential impact on the broader market. Crucially, this assessment should inform a decision-making process that prioritizes communication with the market operator and a SIC, followed by the implementation of pre-approved, objective risk management strategies. This structured approach ensures that actions taken are both compliant and contribute to market stability. Question 3. The control framework reveals that a registered representative in New York is handling a customer order to sell a significant block of XYZ Corporation stock. Simultaneously, the firm's proprietary trading desk holds a substantial long position in XYZ Corporation stock, What is the most appropriate course of action for the registered representative to ensure compliance with FINRA regulations and ethical standards? Option A. Delay executing the customer's sell order until the firm's proprietary position in XYZ Corporation stock is completely liquidated. Option B. Execute the customer's sell order against the firm's proprietary position without informing the customer, assuming the price is within market range. Option C. Immediately disclose the firm's proprietary position to the customer and seek explicit instructions on how to proceed with the order, prioritizing the customer's best interest. Option D. Execute the customer's sell order at a price slightly below the prevailing market bid to facilitate the firm's proprietary position while appearing to offer a minor concession. The correct answer is C. Immediately disclose the firm's proprietary position to the customer and seek explicit instructions on how to proceed with the order, prioritizing the customer's best interest. Explanation: the control framework reveals a potential conflict of interest and a breach of best execution obligations under FINRA rules, specifically related to the handling of customer orders for a security where the firm has a proprietary position. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the trader to balance the firm's interests with the fiduciary duty owed to the customer, ensuring that customer orders are not disadvantaged by the firm's own trading activities. Careful judgment is required to avoid even the appearance of impropriety and to maintain customer trust. The best approach involves immediately disclosing the firm's proprietary position to the customer and seeking explicit instructions on how to proceed with the order, prioritizing the customer's best interest. This aligns with FINRA Rule 5330, failure to execute orders, and the general principles of fair dealing and best execution. By disclosing the conflict and obtaining customer consent, the trader ensures transparency and allows the customer to make an informed decision, thereby fulfilling the firm's obligation to act in the customer's best interest. An incorrect approach involves executing the customer's order against the firm's proprietary position without prior disclosure. This creates a direct conflict of interest and violates the duty of best execution, as the firm may be incentivized to execute the trade at a price less favorable to the customer to benefit its own position. This action could be construed as market manipulation or fraudulent activity under FINRA Rule 2020, manipulation of securities prices. Another incorrect approach is to delay executing the customer's order until the firm's proprietary position is unwound. This also disadvantages the customer by causing unnecessary delay and potentially missing favorable market opportunities. Such a delay, without a clear and justifiable reason communicated to the customer, can be seen as a failure to execute orders promptly and in the customer's best interest, violating FINRA Rule 5330. Finally, an incorrect approach is to execute the customer's order at a slightly less favorable price to the customer, justifying it as a minor concession to accommodate the firm's proprietary position. This is unethical and illegal. The duty of best execution requires seeking the most favorable terms reasonably available for the customer's order, and any deviation for the firm's benefit is a breach of that duty, and FINRA Rule 5330. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, customer best interest, and regulatory compliance. When a potential conflict of interest arises, the immediate step should be to identify the conflict, assess its impact on the customer, disclose the conflict to the customer, and obtain clear instructions. If the conflict cannot be resolved in a manner that fully protects the customer's interests, the firm should decline to execute the trade or seek alternative solutions that do not compromise the customer's position. Question 4. Strategic planning requires a securities trader in Ontario, Canada, to accurately classify an entity's role in the over-the-counter (OC) market. An entity consistently trades a particular equity security on an OTC basis, often taking the other side of trades initiated by other market participants. However, it does not actively display two-sided quotes for this security on a continuous basis, nor does it hold itself out as being ready to buy or sell the security at publicly quoted prices with any significant frequency. Based on Ontario Securities Commission, OSC Rule 21-501, which of the following best describes the trader's assessment of this entity's status? Option A. The entity is a qualified third market maker because its trading activity occurs outside of a traditional exchange. Option B. The entity is a qualified OTC market maker because it actively trades the security on an OTC basis and takes the other side of trades. Option C. The entity is a qualified block positioner because it engages in significant OTC trading volume. Option D. The entity does not meet the definition of a qualified OTC market maker because it does not consistently display two-sided quotes and is not demonstrably committed to providing continuous liquidity in the security. Correct answer is D. The entity does not meet the definition of a qualified OTC market maker because it does not consistently display two-sided quotes and is not demonstrably committed to providing continuous liquidity in the security. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a securities trader in Ontario, Canada, operating under the Ontario Securities Commission (OSC) regulations. The challenge lies in correctly identifying and classifying a trading entity based on its market activities to ensure compliance with the definition of a qualified OTC market maker under OSC Rule 21-501, Marketplace Trading and Reporting Requirements. Misclassification can lead to regulatory scrutiny, fines, and reputational damage. The core difficulty is distinguishing between a firm that merely trades over-the-counter (OTC) and one that actively and consistently provides liquidity in quotes in a manner that qualifies it as a market maker, thereby triggering specific reporting and operational obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the entity's trading patterns and quoting activity against the specific criteria outlined in OSC Rule 21-501 for a qualified OTC market maker. This includes assessing whether the entity consistently displays bids and offers for a security, is prepared to trade at those quoted prices, and does so with a reasonable frequency and in a reasonable size. The entity must demonstrate a commitment to providing liquidity in the OTC market for the specific securities in question. This rigorous, fact-based assessment, directly referencing the regulatory definition and its underlying intent to promote market liquidity and transparency, is the only compliant path. Incorrect approach is analysis. An incorrect approach would be to assume that simply trading a security over the counter, even with some regularity, automatically qualifies an entity as a qualified OTC market maker. This fails to acknowledge the active quoting and liquidity provision requirements inherent in the definition. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the entity's self-declaration or internal classification without independent verification against the OSC's criteria. This bypasses the regulatory obligation to ensure compliance. Furthermore, focusing only on the volume of trades executed without considering the quoting and market-making function would be a misinterpretation of the rule, as high volume alone does not equate to market-making activity. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a systematic approach to regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Understanding the precise definitions and requirements of relevant regulations, in this case, OSC Rule 21-501. 2. Gathering all relevant factual information about the entity's trading activities. 3. Applying the regulatory criteria to the gathered facts in an objective and unbiased manner. 4. Documenting the assessment process and the rationale for the classification. When in doubt, seeking clarification from legal counsel or the regulator is a prudent step. Question 5. Compliance review shows that a broker-dealer in New York is providing direct market access, DMA, to a sophisticated institutional client. The firm has established that the client has robust internal compliance procedures and has been assured by the client that their trading activities will be conducted in accordance with all applicable regulations. The firm has not implemented specific pre-trade risk controls beyond basic order entry validation, nor does it conduct regular, detailed surveillance of the client's DMA activity against specific risk parameters. What is the most appropriate course of action for the broker-dealer to ensure compliance with FINRA market access rule? Option A. Focus solely on post-trade surveillance to identify any potential violations after they occur. Option B. Grant DMA without any specific risk parameters or ongoing monitoring, assuming the client's sophistication negates the need for such measures. Option C. Rely on the institutional client's assurances regarding their internal compliance procedures and assume their trading will be compliant. Option D. Implement comprehensive pre-trade risk controls, establish clear written policies and procedures for DMA, and conduct ongoing, detailed surveillance of the client's trading activity against defined risk parameters. The correct answer is D. Implement comprehensive pre-trade risk controls, establish clear written policies and procedures for DMA, and conduct ongoing, detailed surveillance of the client's trading activity against defined risk parameters. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in securities trading, balancing the efficiency and speed of direct market access, DMA, with the paramount need for regulatory compliance and risk management. The firm's obligation is to ensure that its clients, who are granted DMA, adhere to all applicable FINRA rules and the firm's own policies. The challenge lies in implementing effective oversight without unduly hindering legitimate trading activities, especially when dealing with a sophisticated institutional client. The firm must proactively identify and mitigate potential risks associated with DMA, such as market manipulation, excessive risk-taking, and noncompliance with reporting requirements, all while maintaining a strong client relationship. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a multi-layered approach to DMA oversight. This includes establishing clear, written policies and procedures that define the scope of DMA, client eligibility, risk controls, and ongoing monitoring requirements. Crucially, it necessitates robust pre-trade risk controls, such as pre-trade capital checks, order size limits, and velocity checks, to prevent erroneous or manipulative orders from entering the market. Post-trade surveillance is also essential to detect patterns of suspicious activity. For a sophisticated institutional client, the firm should conduct thorough due diligence, understand the client's trading strategies, and implement tailored risk parameters. Regular reviews of the client's DMA activity against these parameters and FINRA rules are vital. This comprehensive approach directly addresses FINRA Rule 15C3-5, which mandates that broker-dealers implement risk management controls and supervisory procedures reasonably designed to manage the risks associated with providing market access. Incorrect approaches analysis, relying solely on the client's internal controls and assurances, is a significant regulatory failure. FINRA Rule 15C3-5 places the ultimate responsibility on the broker-dealer providing market access to implement its own risk management systems. The client's internal controls are not a substitute for the broker-dealer's own supervisory obligations. This approach fails to meet the requirements for independent risk management and oversight. Implementing only post-trade surveillance without pre-trade controls is also insufficient. While post-trade analysis can identify violations after they have occurred, it does not prevent them. FINRA Rule 15C3-5 emphasizes the importance of pre-trade controls to prevent erroneous or manipulative orders from reaching the market in the first place. This approach leaves the firm vulnerable to significant market and regulatory risk. Granting DMA without any specific risk parameters or ongoing monitoring, assuming the institutional client is sophisticated, is a dereliction of duty. Sophistication does not absolve the broker-dealer of its responsibility to supervise and manage the risks associated with providing market access. This approach ignores the explicit requirements of FINRA Rule 15C3-5 for implementing appropriate risk management controls and supervisory procedures tailored to the specific access arrangements. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with DMA arrangements must adopt a proactive and risk-based approach. The decision-making process should begin with a thorough understanding of the relevant regulation, particularly FINRA Rule 15C3-5. This involves assessing the potential risks associated with the specific client and trading strategy. The firm should then develop and implement a comprehensive set of controls, encompassing both pre-trade and post-trade measures that are proportionate to the identified risks. Regular review and adaptation of these controls based on market conditions and client activity are crucial. Documentation of all policies, procedures, and risk assessments is essential for demonstrating compliance during regulatory examination. Question 6. Compliance review shows that a registered securities trader in California is voluntarily terminating their association with their FINRA member firm. The trader has fulfilled all their professional obligations to the firm and is seeking to ensure their registration is properly terminated according to FINRA rules. What is the most appropriate course of action for the registered trader to take? Option A. Attempt to file the Form U-5 independently with FINRA to expedite the process. Option B. Proactively communicate with their firm's compliance department to confirm the firm's intent to file the Form U-5 and understand the expected timeline for its submission. Option C. Assume the firm will automatically file the Form U-5 correctly and on time without any follow-up, as this is standard procedure. Option D. Wait until 30 days after their last day of employment to inquire about the status of the Form U-5 filing. The correct answer is B. Proactively communicate with their firm's compliance department to confirm the firm's intent to file the Form U-5 and understand the expected timeline for its submission. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a registered securities trader to navigate the complexities of voluntary termination of registration while ensuring compliance with FINRA regulations, specifically concerning the timely filing of Form U-5. The challenge lies in understanding the precise obligations and timelines associated with this process, especially when the individual is leaving their firm under potentially sensitive circumstances. Careful judgment is required to avoid regulatory violations and maintain professional integrity. The best approach involves the registered person proactively communicating with their firm's compliance department to confirm the firm's intent to file the Form U-5 and to understand the expected timeline for its submission. This proactive engagement ensures the individual is aware of their registration status and can verify the accuracy of the information being reported. This approach is correct because FINRA Rule 1160(b) requires a member firm to file a Uniform Termination Notice for Securities Industry Registration, Form U-5, within 30 days of the termination of a registered person's employment or association. By confirming the firm's intent and timeline, the individual is taking responsible steps to ensure this regulatory obligation is met, and that their registration status is accurately reflected in the CRD system. This also allows them to address any potential inaccuracies or omissions on the Form U-5 promptly. An incorrect approach would be to assume the firm will automatically file the Form U-5 correctly and on time without any follow-up. This fails to acknowledge the potential for administrative errors or delays within the firm and neglects the individual's responsibility to monitor their own registration status. Another incorrect approach would be to wait until the 30-day period has passed and then inquire about the filing, as this delays the verification process and could leave the individual in a state of uncertainty regarding their registration status for an extended period. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to attempt to file the Form U-5 independently without the firm's involvement, as the regulatory framework mandates that the member firm is responsible for filing this notice. Professionals should approach voluntary termination of registration by prioritizing clear communication with their employing firm's compliance department. They should understand the firm's internal procedures for filing Form U-5, confirm the expected filing date, and be prepared to review the submitted form for accuracy. This proactive and collaborative approach ensures adherence to regulatory requirements and minimizes the risk of unintended consequences related to their registration status. Question 7. The performance metrics show a substantial increase in the payments your firm receives for market-making activities in a specific over-the-counter security traded on NASDAQ. Your firm has been providing continuous two-sided quotes and maintaining tight bid-ask spreads, contributing significantly to the security's liquidity. The issuer of the security has expressed gratitude for your firm's role in facilitating trading and has suggested that the increased payments are a reflection of your firm's excellent service. However, a junior trader suggests that the firm should interpret these increased payments as a bonus for achieving high trading volumes, and that portion could be used for a discretionary issuer relations fund to further strengthen ties with the issuer. What is the most appropriate course of action for your firm to take regarding these increased market-making payments, adhering to SEC regulations? Option A. Accept the increased payments based on a general understanding of market support and the issuer's gratitude, without requiring detailed documentation of specific market-making services rendered. Option B. Interpret the increased payments as a bonus for achieving high trading volumes and allocate a portion to a discretionary issuer relations fund to foster goodwill with the issuer. Option C. Proactively engage with the issuer to negotiate a formal agreement for issuer relations services funded by a portion of the market-making payments to solidify the partnership. Option D. Meticulously document the specific market-making services provided, such as the bid-ask spread maintained, the volume of trades facilitated, and the contribution to overall market liquidity, ensuring the payments align with these documented services and industry standards for market making. The correct answer is D. Meticulously document the specific market-making services provided, such as the bid-ask spread maintained, the volume of trades facilitated, and the contribution to overall market liquidity, ensuring the payments align with these documented services and industry standards for market making. Explanation: the performance metrics show a significant increase in trading volume for a particular security, which has led to a substantial increase in the payments received by your firm for providing liquidity as a market maker. This scenario is professionally challenging because it pits the firm's financial success against the potential for regulatory scrutiny regarding the fairness and transparency of market-making compensation. The pressure to maintain high performance and profitability can create an environment where the line between legitimate compensation and undue influence becomes blurred. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all payments received are solely for the provision of market-making services and do not constitute inducements for preferential treatment or other prohibited activities under the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) regulations. The best professional approach involves meticulously documenting the basis for all payments received. This includes clearly defining the services rendered, the volume of trades executed, the bid-ask spreads maintained, and the overall contribution to market liquidity for the specific security. This approach ensures that compensation is directly tied to the market-making function and is justifiable under SEC Rule 15C3-1, net capital requirements for brokers or dealers, and related guidance on market-making obligations. By maintaining detailed records and ensuring that payments align with industry standards for market-making services, the firm demonstrates compliance with the spirit and letter of regulations designed to prevent manipulative practices and ensure fair markets. An approach that involves accepting payments based on a general understanding of market support, without specific documentation of the services provided, is professionally unacceptable. This lack of specificity creates a significant risk of violating SEC regulations, as it can be interpreted as payment for order flow or other arrangements that are not directly related to the provision of bona fide market-making services. Such an approach fails to demonstrate that the compensation is solely for the market-making function, potentially leading to accusations of improper inducements. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to interpret the increased payments as a reward for achieving high trading volumes, irrespective of the market-making function itself. While high volume may be a byproduct of effective market making, the compensation must be demonstrably linked to the services provided, e.g., tight spreads, continuous quotes, risk assumed, rather than simply the quantity of trades. This can be seen as a form of kickback or an incentive for prioritizing certain securities over others, which is contrary to the principles of fair and orderly markets enforced by the SEC. Finally, an approach that involves using a portion of the increased market-making payments to fund discretionary marketing initiatives for the issuer of the security, without clear disclosure and regulatory approval, is also professionally unsound. This can create the appearance of a quid pro quo arrangement, where market-making compensation is indirectly used to influence the issuer or other market participants, potentially violating anti-manipulation rules. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, documentation, and adherence to regulatory intent. When faced with increased market-making compensation, the first step should be to review the firm's market-making agreement and relevant SEC rules. The firm should then meticulously document the specific services provided that justify the compensation, ensuring it aligns with industry norms and the firm's stated market-making obligations. Any ambiguity should be clarified through consultation with legal and compliance departments before accepting payments. The ultimate goal is to ensure that all compensation is earned through legitimate market-making activities and can be clearly defended to regulators. Question 8. Governance review demonstrates that a registered broker-dealer in New York is increasingly utilizing alternative trading systems (ATS) for a significant portion of its order flow. Which of the following approaches best ensures the firm's compliance with U.S. securities regulations and ethical trading practices? Option A. Integrate ATS usage into the firm's standard brokerage operations without a specific risk assessment or dedicated compliance oversight for these venues. Option B. Prioritize the selection of ATSs that offer the most significant cost savings and operational efficiencies, assuming regulatory compliance is adequately handled by the ATS provider. Option C. Rely solely on the ATS providers' attestations of compliance with SEC and FINRA regulations, without conducting independent due diligence or internal monitoring. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the firm's ATS usage, focusing on the ATS's operational integrity, data reporting capabilities, and alignment with SEC rules on fair and orderly markets, while implementing robust internal surveillance and risk management protocols. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of the firm's ATS usage, focusing on the ATS's operational integrity, data reporting capabilities, and alignment with SEC rules on fair and orderly markets, while implementing robust internal surveillance and risk management protocols. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a securities firm to balance the operational benefits of using an alternative trading system, ATS, with its regulatory obligations to ensure fair and orderly markets and protect investors. The firm must proactively identify and mitigate potential risks associated with ATS operations, particularly concerning transparency and market impact, to comply with the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 and FINRA rules governing ATSs in the United States. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a proactive and comprehensive governance review that specifically assesses the firm's use of ATSs. This approach correctly identifies the need to evaluate the ATS's operational integrity, data reporting capabilities, and compliance with SEC rules regarding order handling and transparency. It prioritizes understanding how the ATS contributes to or potentially detracts from fair and orderly markets, aligning with the core principles of securities regulation in the U.S. This includes ensuring the firm has adequate surveillance and risk management systems in place to monitor its activity on the ATS and to detect any manipulative or abusive trading practices. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach focuses solely on the cost savings and efficiency gains of using an ATS, neglecting the critical regulatory oversight required. This overlooks the potential for increased market fragmentation and reduced transparency, which can hinder effective market surveillance and investor protection, violating the spirit and letter of U.S. securities laws. Another incorrect approach involves relying exclusively on the ATS provider's self-certification of compliance without independent verification. This abdication of responsibility fails to meet the firm's duty to conduct due diligence and ensure its trading activities on the ATS adhere to all applicable regulations, potentially leading to violations of SEC and FINRA rules. A third incorrect approach is to treat ATS usage as a standard brokerage function without specific risk assessment. This fails to acknowledge the unique regulatory considerations and potential risks associated with ATSs, such as their impact on price discovery and the potential for unfair advantages, thereby not fulfilling the firm's obligation to manage risks associated with its trading venues. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to ATS usage. This involves understanding the specific regulatory framework governing ATSs in the United States, including SEC Rule 301 and FINRA Rule 5320. Firms must conduct thorough due diligence on any ATS they intend to use, assessing its technology, operational controls, and compliance procedures. Regular internal reviews and audits are essential to ensure ongoing adherence to regulatory requirements and to identify and mitigate any emerging risks. A proactive stance, prioritizing regulatory compliance and market integrity over mere operational convenience, is paramount. Question 9. Stakeholder feedback indicates that some traders are experiencing delays in the public dissemination of trade data when utilizing Alternative Display Facility, ADF, data systems for trades executed on national securities exchanges in the United States. A securities trader in New York is executing trades on the New York Stock Exchange, NYSE, and is utilizing an ADF for order routing and execution. The trader wants to understand the most appropriate method for ensuring that these NYSE-executed trades are accurately and promptly reflected in the public market data. Option A. Rely solely on the ADF's internal reporting mechanisms to disseminate trade information, assuming it covers all necessary public reporting. Option B. Assume that all trades visible on the ADF are automatically and instantaneously reported to the CTS without further verification. Option C. Ensure that trades executed on the NYSE through the ADF are reported to the Consolidated Tape System, CTS, as soon as practicable, in accordance with FINRA Rule 6280 and related guidance. Option D. Delay reporting NYSE executed trades processed through the ADF to the CTS until the end of the trading day to consolidate reporting. Correct answer is C. Ensure that trades executed on the NYSE through the ADF are reported to the Consolidated Tape System, CTS, as soon as practicable, in accordance with FINRA Rule 6280 and related guidance. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a securities trader to navigate the complexities of using data from an alternative display facility, ADF, while adhering to FINRA regulations, specifically concerning the accurate and timely dissemination of trade information. The core tension lies in balancing the efficiency of ADF data with the regulatory obligation to ensure that the public markets receive the most current and complete picture of trading activity. Careful judgment is required to avoid misleading the market or violating reporting rules. The best professional approach involves prioritizing the reporting of trades executed on a national securities exchange through the ADF to the Consolidated Tape System, CTS, as soon as practicable, in accordance with FINRA Rule 6280 and related guidance on ADF data usage. This ensures that the public market receives the most up-to-date information about trades occurring on exchanges, thereby maintaining market transparency and integrity. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the regulatory intent of the Consolidated Tape System, which is to provide a comprehensive and real-time view of trading activity across all exchanges. By promptly reporting exchange-executed trades via the ADF to the CTS, the trader fulfills their obligation to contribute to this public information stream, preventing information asymmetry and potential market manipulation. An incorrect approach involves solely relying on the ADF's internal reporting mechanisms without ensuring that trades executed on a national securities exchange are also reported to the CTS. This failure to report to the CTS, even if the trade is visible on the ADF, violates FINRA reporting requirements. The ADF is a facility for executing trades, but the obligation to report exchange-executed trades to the public consolidated system remains paramount. Another incorrect approach is to delay reporting trades executed on a national securities exchange through the ADF to the CTS until the end of the trading day. This delay creates a significant gap in public market information, potentially allowing for unfair advantages and undermining the principle of real-time price discovery. Finally, an incorrect approach is to assume that all trades visible on the ADF are automatically reported to the CTS without independent verification. This assumption neglects the trader's responsibility to ensure compliance with reporting obligations, which requires active confirmation that exchange-executed trades are properly disseminated to the public tape. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific regulatory obligations related to the trading venue and the type of security being traded. This involves clearly identifying whether a trade is executed on a national securities exchange or an ADF, and understanding the distinct reporting requirements for each. A critical step is to verify that all trades executed on national securities exchanges, regardless of whether they are initially processed through an ADF, are reported to the Consolidated Tape System in a timely manner. This verification process should be integrated into the trading workflow, with clear protocols and checks in place to ensure compliance. When in doubt, consulting with compliance personnel or referring to FINRA rules and guidance is essential to maintain ethical conduct and regulatory adherence. Question 10. Stakeholder feedback indicates a need to assess the practical application of trading rules in complex scenarios. A securities trader in New York is tasked with executing a client's order to sell 500,000 shares of XYZ Corporation, a thinly traded stock with an average daily volume of only 25,000 shares. The current market price is $50.00 per share. The trader is concerned that executing the entire order at once will significantly depress the stock's price, negatively impacting the client's net proceeds. What is the most appropriate course of action for the trader to take, adhering to FINRA regulations? Option A. Execute the entire 500,000 share order immediately at the prevailing market price to fulfill the client's request as quickly as possible. Option B. Execute the order by selling shares to a single counterparty at a negotiated price, even if that price is significantly below the current market, to ensure rapid execution. Option C. Inform the client that the order is too large to execute and refuse to trade until the client can break it down into smaller, more manageable portions. Option D. Break the order into smaller, sequential sell orders, utilizing limit orders with prices slightly below the current market, and monitor market conditions closely to adjust the execution strategy as needed. Correct answer is D. Break the order into smaller, sequential sell orders, utilizing limit orders with prices slightly below the current market, and monitor market conditions closely to adjust the execution strategy as needed. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a trader to balance the immediate need to execute a large order with the regulatory obligation to avoid market manipulation. The sheer size of the order, relative to typical trading volumes, raises concerns about its potential impact on the stock's price. A trader must exercise careful judgment to fulfill their client's needs without violating FINRA rules designed to ensure fair and orderly markets. The best professional approach involves breaking down the large order into smaller, manageable portions and executing them over a period of time, while also considering the prevailing market conditions and the stock's liquidity. This strategy, known as iceberg or reserve orders, allows the trader to gradually enter the market without signaling the full size of their intention. This is correct because it aligns with the principles of fair dealing and market integrity mandated by FINRA Rule 5210, fraudulent and manipulative transactions, and the general principles of best execution. By minimizing the immediate price impact, the trader acts in the best interest of their client and contributes to a more stable market. An incorrect approach would be to attempt to execute the entire order at once, regardless of the price impact. This could lead to a significant artificial price movement, potentially benefiting the trader or other market participants at the expense of the broader market and the client's best execution. Such an action could be construed as an attempt to manipulate the price, violating FINRA Rule 5210. Another incorrect approach is to delay execution indefinitely due to the order's size, without communicating with the client about the potential challenges and alternative strategies. This failure to act and communicate can lead to missed opportunities for the client and a breach of the duty of best execution, which requires traders to seek the most favorable terms reasonably available for their customers' orders. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to execute the order in a way that creates a false impression of market activity, such as rapidly buying and selling the same security to inflate its trading volume. This is a clear violation of FINRA Rule 5210 and is designed to mislead other market participants. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and client best interest. This involves understanding the potential market impact of large orders, utilizing appropriate order types to mitigate such impact, maintaining open communication with clients regarding execution strategies and challenges, and always adhering to FINRA rules against manipulative practices. Question 11. The control framework reveals that a registered broker-dealer in California, subject to SEC and FINRA regulations, needs to develop and implement policies and procedures as mandated by Section 15(g) of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance and effective risk management? Option A. Develop comprehensive policies and procedures that are integrated into daily operations, supported by regular risk assessments, ongoing employee training, and a system for periodic review and updates, with clear lines of responsibility for oversight. Option B. Delegate the entire responsibility for policy creation and implementation to the compliance department, focusing primarily on meeting the minimum documentation requirements. Option C. Create a detailed policy manual that outlines all required procedures, with the expectation that employees will independently adhere to them without formal training or ongoing oversight. Option D. Prioritize the development of policies that are cost-effective to implement, utilizing generic templates and minimizing investment in training and ongoing monitoring. The correct answer is A. Develop comprehensive policies and procedures that are integrated into daily operations, supported by regular risk assessments, ongoing employee training, and a system for periodic review and updates, with clear lines of responsibility for oversight. Explanation. The control framework reveals a critical challenge for a registered broker-dealer in California operating under FINRA and SEC regulations, specifically concerning the development and implementation of policies and procedures mandated by Section 15(g) of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of regulatory intent, which is to ensure robust internal controls and risk management to protect investors and market integrity. The firm must not only create policies, but also demonstrate their practical effectiveness in preventing fraudulent activities and ensuring compliance. Careful judgment is required to balance operational efficiency with stringent regulatory adherence. The best approach involves a comprehensive and proactive strategy that integrates regulatory requirements into the firm's daily operations and culture. This includes establishing clear lines of responsibility for policy development and oversight, conducting regular risk assessments to identify potential vulnerabilities, and implementing ongoing training programs for all relevant personnel. Furthermore, the firm should establish a mechanism for periodic review and updating of these policies to reflect changes in regulations, market conditions, or the firm's business activities. This holistic approach ensures that the policies are not merely a compliance exercise, but a living framework that actively mitigates risk and promotes ethical conduct, directly addressing the spirit and letter of Section 15(g). An approach that focuses solely on documenting policies without a robust implementation and oversight plan fails to meet the regulatory intent. This can lead to a situation where policies exist on paper but are not effectively enforced, leaving the firm vulnerable to compliance breaches and investor harm. Such an approach neglects the critical aspect of operationalizing controls and fostering a culture of compliance. Another inadequate approach might involve delegating the entire responsibility for policy development to a single department without adequate cross-functional input or senior management oversight. This can result in policies that are either too narrowly focused, fail to address all relevant risks, or are not practical for other departments to implement, undermining their effectiveness and potentially creating gaps in the control framework. Finally, an approach that prioritizes cost-saving measures over thorough policy development and implementation, such as using generic templates without customization or neglecting regular training, poses significant risks. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to regulatory compliance and investor protection, potentially leading to severe penalties and reputational damage. Professionals should approach this by first thoroughly understanding the specific regulatory obligations under Section 15(g) and related SEC and FINRA rules applicable to broker-dealers in California. They should then conduct a comprehensive risk assessment tailored to the firm's business model and operations. Based on this assessment, they should develop clear, actionable policies and procedures, assign responsibility for their implementation and oversight, and establish a system for ongoing monitoring, testing, and refinement. Regular training and communication are essential to ensure all employees understand their roles and responsibilities within the control framework. Question 12. The efficiency study reveals that a registered broker-dealer in California, Golden State Securities, is considering reducing its customer-facing operational hours on Fridays from 9:00 a.m. to 3:00 p.m. Pacific Time to 9:00 a.m. to 1:00 p.m. Pacific Time, citing a significant decrease in client-initiated trades during the later afternoon on Fridays. The firm's compliance department is seeking guidance on whether this reduction is permissible under FINRA Rule 3110 and California Securities regulations concerning normal business hours. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for Golden State Securities? Option A. Focus solely on the efficiency study's findings and implement the reduced hours, arguing that the firm is still open during a significant portion of the standard trading day and that client demand is the primary driver for operational adjustments. Option B. Conduct a thorough review of FINRA Rule 3110 and relevant California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, DFPI, regulations to ascertain the precise definition and requirements of normal business hours for broker-dealers, and then assess if the proposed reduction would impede client access to services or the ability to execute trades during standard market hours, making adjustments only if compliant. Option C. Proceed with the reduced hours, but only inform clients via a general notice on the company website, without seeking explicit approval or further regulatory clarification. Option D. Implement the reduced hours on Fridays immediately to capture efficiency gains, assuming that normal business hours are flexible and can be adjusted based on internal operational data and client trading patterns. Correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough review of FINRA Rule 3110 and relevant California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation (DFPI) regulations to ascertain the precise definition and requirements of normal business hours for broker-dealers, and then assess if the proposed reduction would impede client access to services or the ability to execute trades during standard market hours, making adjustments only if compliant. Explanation: the efficiency study reveals a potential conflict between a firm's operational needs and the regulatory requirements for maintaining normal business hours. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the practicalities of a trading business with strict compliance obligations, particularly concerning client accessibility and market participation. A firm must ensure its operations do not inadvertently disadvantage clients or create an impression of unavailability during periods when securities trading is active. The best approach involves a thorough review of FINRA Rule 3110 and relevant state regulations in California to determine the precise definition and implications of normal business hours for a registered broker-dealer. This includes understanding that these hours are generally intended to ensure that customers can conduct business with the firm and that the firm can meet its regulatory obligations. The firm should then assess its current operating schedule against these requirements, focusing on whether its proposed adjustments would impede customer access to services or the ability to execute trades during standard market hours. If adjustments are necessary, they must be implemented in a manner that maintains compliance, potentially through clear communication with clients, and ensuring adequate staffing or alternative access methods during critical trading periods. This proactive and compliant stance ensures the firm operates within the bounds of regulatory expectations and ethical client service. An incorrect approach would be to unilaterally decide to reduce operating hours based solely on internal efficiency studies without a comprehensive regulatory review. This fails to acknowledge the regulatory imperative to be available to clients during normal business hours, which are defined by FINRA and state securities laws to facilitate market participation and client service. Such a decision could lead to accusations of hindering client access to trading services, a direct violation of regulatory expectations. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that normal business hours are flexible and can be dictated solely by the firm's perceived operational needs, without considering the impact on clients or the broader market. This demonstrates a disregard for the spirit and letter of regulations designed to protect investors and ensure fair market practices. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to implement reduced hours without any communication to clients or regulatory bodies. This lack of transparency is ethically problematic and can lead to significant compliance issues, as it suggests an attempt to operate outside of established norms without proper disclosure or justification. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and client interests. This involves 1. Identifying the relevant regulatory framework, FINRA rules and state securities laws. 2. Understanding the specific requirements of those regulations, definition of normal business hours, client access. 3. Assessing the firm's current operations against these requirements. 4. Evaluating any proposed changes for their impact on compliance and client service. 5. Implementing changes in a transparent and compliant manner, seeking guidance from legal and compliance departments when necessary. Question 13. System analysis indicates a financial firm operating in California frequently trades its own securities for its proprietary account, often executing a significant number of trades daily. The firm does not explicitly advertise itself as a buyer or seller of any particular security, nor does it display quotes on any public trading platform. Based on Section 3A, 38 of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, which of the following best characterizes the firm's potential status regarding market-making obligations? Option A. The firm is a market maker because it is actively trading securities, regardless of its public representation. Option B. The firm is a market maker if it is registered as a broker-dealer with the SEC, irrespective of its trading activities. Option C. The firm is automatically a market maker due to its high volume of proprietary trading. Option D. The firm is likely not a market maker because it does not hold itself out as being willing to buy and sell a particular security for its own account on a regular and continuous basis. The correct answer is D. The firm is likely not a market maker because it does not hold itself out as being willing to buy and sell a particular security for its own account on a regular and continuous basis. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a precise understanding of the definition of a market maker under the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, specifically Section 3A. 38, as it applies to the state of California. Misinterpreting this definition can lead to improper registration, reporting, and compliance failures, potentially resulting in regulatory sanctions and reputational damage. The core challenge lies in distinguishing between entities that merely trade for their own account and those that actively hold themselves out as willing to buy and sell a particular security on a regular and continuous basis. Correct approach analysis. The best approach is to recognize that a firm acting as a market maker under Section 3A. 38 of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, and therefore subject to FINRA registration requirements in California, is one that holds itself out as being willing to buy and sell a particular security for its own account on a regular and continuous basis. This definition emphasizes the holding out aspect and the regular and continuous nature of the trading activity. A firm meeting this criteria must comply with all applicable federal securities laws and FINRA rules, including registration as a broker-dealer and adherence to market-making obligations. This aligns with the intent of Section 3A. 38 to identify and regulate entities that provide liquidity and facilitate trading in the securities markets. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that any firm trading frequently for its own account is automatically a market maker. This fails to consider the crucial element of holding oneself out to the public as willing to buy and sell. A firm might engage in proprietary trading without intending to provide continuous liquidity or quote prices to the broader market, thus not meeting the definition of a market maker under Section 3A. 38. Another incorrect approach is to believe that if a firm is not registered as a broker-dealer with the SEC, it cannot be considered a market maker. While broker-dealer registration is a common consequence of market-making activity, the definition of a market maker is based on the nature of the trading activity itself, not solely on the registration status. A firm could potentially engage in market-making activities that necessitate broker-dealer registration, and failing to recognize this could lead to non-compliance. A further incorrect approach is to focus solely on the volume of trades without considering the intent and public representation of the firm. High trading volume alone does not define a market maker. The commitment to providing continuous two-sided markets is the defining characteristic. A firm could have high volume due to speculative proprietary trading without fulfilling the role of a market maker. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this by first dissecting the definition of a market maker as provided by Section 3A. 38 of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. This involves identifying the key components: holding itself out, willing to buy and sell for its own account, and on a regular and continuous basis. When evaluating a firm's activities, professionals must assess whether the firm's conduct and public statements align with these criteria. If a firm's activities appear to meet this definition, the professional must then consider the implications for registration, reporting, and compliance with relevant regulations, including those specific to California and FINRA. This requires a nuanced understanding of both the letter and the spirit of the law. Question 14. During the evaluation of trading system performance in New York, a securities trader notices a recurring anomaly in a particular execution platform that appears to be consistently providing slightly more favorable execution prices for their own trades compared to the prevailing market quotes. The trader suspects this might be a system glitch, but is unsure of its exact nature or extent. What is the most appropriate course of action for the trader to take? Option A. Continue using the trading system but attempt to manually adjust trade entries to compensate for the perceived price advantage while observing the market closely. Option B. Immediately cease using the anomalous trading system and report the observed discrepancy to the firm's compliance department and technical support for investigation. Option C. Discuss the observed system anomaly with other traders on the desk to gather their opinions and potentially coordinate a strategy for its use or reporting. Option D. Ignore the anomaly, assuming it is a minor system fluctuation that will likely self-correct and is not significant enough to warrant reporting. The correct answer is B. Immediately cease using the anomalous trading system and report the observed discrepancy to the firm's compliance department and technical support for investigation. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a securities trader to balance the immediate need for efficient trade execution with the paramount obligation to ensure fair and orderly markets, as mandated by FINRA regulations in the United States. The trader's actions directly impact market integrity and the fairness of pricing for all participants. Careful judgment is required to avoid actions that could be construed as manipulative or detrimental to the market. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the trading system and adhering to established protocols for reporting and addressing system anomalies. This means immediately ceasing the use of the identified problematic trading system and reporting the issue through the appropriate channels, such as the firm's compliance department or designated technical support. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with FINRA Rule 5320, prohibition on trading ahead of customer orders, and the general principles of fair dealing and market integrity. By reporting the issue, the trader contributes to the identification and resolution of a potential systemic problem that could affect multiple market participants. This proactive measure ensures that the firm can investigate the anomaly, prevent further potential misuse or disruption, and maintain compliance with regulatory requirements for orderly trading. An incorrect approach would be to continue using the trading system while attempting to manually compensate for its perceived flaws. This is professionally unacceptable because it introduces a high risk of errors in trade execution and could lead to the trader inadvertently violating trading rules, such as trading ahead of customer orders or executing trades at prices that do not reflect true market value. Furthermore, it bypasses the firm's established procedures for system maintenance and issue resolution, potentially masking a larger problem that could impact other traders or the broader market. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the system anomaly and hope it resolves itself or is not significant enough to warrant attention. This is professionally unacceptable, as it demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the potential impact on market fairness and the firm's compliance obligations. Systemic issues, even if seemingly minor, can have cascading effects and contribute to market instability. A final incorrect approach would be to discuss the system anomaly with other traders to gauge their experiences and potentially coordinate a collective response without involving compliance. This is professionally unacceptable because it could be interpreted as an attempt to collude or manipulate market behavior, even if unintentional. It also circumvents the proper reporting channels and delays the necessary investigation and resolution by the firm's designated personnel. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. When encountering a system anomaly that could impact trade execution or market integrity, the immediate step should be to cease using the problematic system and report the issue through official channels. This ensures that the firm is aware of the situation and can take appropriate action to maintain fair and orderly markets, thereby protecting both the firm and its clients from potential regulatory violations and financial losses. Question 15. What factors determine a securities firm's eligibility to achieve market-making status in Ontario, Canada, beyond simply posting quotes? Option A. The firm's ability to consistently offer the tightest bid-ask spreads in the market, regardless of its execution capabilities or risk management protocols. Option B. The firm's aggressive quoting strategy aimed at capturing market share, without a comprehensive assessment of its ability to manage inventory and potential losses. Option C. The firm's investment in the most advanced quoting technology, even if its capital reserves and trading personnel are insufficient to support active market making. Option D. The firm's demonstrated capacity to provide continuous two-sided markets with robust operational infrastructure, risk management, and a commitment to regulatory compliance. The correct answer is D. The firm's demonstrated capacity to provide continuous two-sided markets with robust operational infrastructure, risk management, and a commitment to regulatory compliance. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a securities firm to navigate the complex requirements for achieving market-making status in Ontario, Canada, while balancing competitive pressures and regulatory obligations. The firm must demonstrate not only the capacity to provide continuous two-sided markets, but also the commitment to do so in a manner that upholds market integrity and investor protection, as mandated by the Ontario Securities Commission (OSC), and relevant self-regulatory organizations like the Investment Industry Regulatory Organization of Canada (IIROC). Careful judgment is required to ensure all actions align with the spirit and letter of the regulations governing market making. The best approach involves proactively engaging with the relevant regulatory bodies and demonstrating a robust operational framework that meets all prescribed criteria for market making. This includes establishing clear internal policies and procedures for quoting, trading, and risk management, as well as having the necessary capital and technological infrastructure to support continuous two-sided markets. The firm should be prepared to provide evidence of its ability to manage inventory, execute trades efficiently, and contribute to market liquidity. This proactive and transparent engagement ensures compliance with OSC rules and IIROC dealer member rules concerning market making, fostering trust and credibility with regulators and the market. An incorrect approach would be to interpret the continuous two-sided market requirement solely as a matter of posting quotes, without a genuine commitment to execute trades at those quotes, especially when market conditions become volatile. This could lead to a situation where the firm is perceived as a phantom market maker, providing quotes that are not realistically executable, thereby failing to contribute to market liquidity and potentially misleading other market participants. Such behavior would contravene the expectation of providing genuine liquidity and could result in regulatory scrutiny and sanctions for failing to meet the obligations of a market maker. Another incorrect approach involves focusing solely on the technical aspects of quoting systems without adequately addressing the underlying operational capacity and risk management protocols. While technology is crucial, market making also demands sufficient capital, experienced personnel, and robust risk controls to manage inventory and potential losses. Neglecting these fundamental operational requirements, even with sophisticated quoting technology, would mean the firm is not truly equipped to fulfill the responsibilities of a market maker and could lead to significant financial and reputational damage, as well as regulatory noncompliance. Finally, an approach that prioritizes aggressive quoting strategies to gain market share without a commensurate focus on the firm's ability to manage the associated risks and obligations is also flawed. Market making is not simply about being the tightest or most aggressive quote provider. It is about providing a stable and reliable source of liquidity. Overextending quoting capabilities without the necessary infrastructure and risk management to support those quotes can lead to significant losses and undermine the firm's ability to act as a responsible market maker, potentially violating regulatory expectations for prudent business conduct. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the specific regulatory requirements for market making in Ontario. This involves consulting the OSC's rules, IIROC dealer member rules, and any relevant guidance documents. The next step is to assess the firm's current capabilities against these requirements, identifying any gaps in capital, technology, personnel, or risk management. A proactive strategy should then be developed to address these gaps, including engaging with regulators to clarify expectations and demonstrate the firm's commitment to meeting its obligations. Throughout this process, ethical considerations, such as fair dealing and market integrity, must be paramount, ensuring that the pursuit of market-making status does not compromise the firm's responsibilities to investors and the broader market. Question 16. Market research demonstrates that alternative trading systems (ATS) operating in Ontario, Canada, are subject to specific record-keeping requirements. An ATS is reviewing its current practices for retaining order and trade data. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework established by the Ontario Securities Commission (OSC) for ATS record-keeping? Option A. Retaining only aggregated trading volume and value data, and discarding detailed order information after 1 year to optimize storage space. Option B. Implementing a system that captures and retains detailed records of all orders and executed trades, including participant identifiers, security details, timestamps, and prices, ensuring these records are maintained for at least 5 years with the first 2 years in a readily accessible format. Option C. relying exclusively on the record-keeping systems of the individual trading participants to fulfill the ATS's regulatory obligations for order and trade data retention. Option D. Storing all order and trade records in a proprietary, non-standardized format that requires significant manual effort to extract and present to regulators only when a formal request is received. The correct answer is B. Implementing a system that captures and retains detailed records of all orders and executed trades, including participant identifiers, security details, timestamps, and prices, ensuring these records are maintained for at least 5 years with the first 2 years in a readily accessible format. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a securities trader operating an alternative trading system, ATS, in Ontario, Canada, to balance the operational efficiency of their platform with the stringent record-keeping obligations mandated by the Ontario Securities Commission. OSC. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that all necessary information is captured and retained without creating undue burdens that could hinder the ATS's functionality or competitiveness, while strictly adhering to regulatory timelines and data integrity requirements. Careful judgment is required to implement systems and procedures that are both compliant and practical. The best professional approach involves proactively establishing and maintaining comprehensive, accurate, and readily accessible records of all order and trade information, including details of the participants, the securities traded, the time of execution, and the price. This approach aligns directly with the requirements of OSC Rule 23-501, Trading, Settlement and Custody of Securities, and related guidance, which mandate that ATSs keep records of all orders and trades for a minimum of 5 years, with the first 2 years in a readily accessible format. This ensures that regulatory bodies can conduct effective oversight, investigate potential market abuses, and reconstruct trading activity when necessary. Maintaining these records in a way that allows for timely retrieval and analysis is paramount for demonstrating compliance and fostering market integrity. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the internal systems of the trading counterparties to maintain the necessary records. While counterparties have their own record-keeping obligations, an ATS in Ontario is directly responsible for its own records. Delegating this responsibility entirely to others fails to meet the ATS's direct regulatory duty and creates a significant gap in oversight and accountability. This approach risks incomplete or inconsistent data, making it impossible for the ATS to satisfy OSC requirements for readily accessible and comprehensive records. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to retain only summary-level trading data and discard detailed order information after a short period. OSC Rule 23-501 requires the retention of detailed order and trade information, not just aggregated data. Discarding detailed records prematurely prevents regulators from conducting thorough investigations into trading patterns, potential manipulation, or other market misconduct. It undermines the purpose of record keeping, which is to provide a complete audit trail of trading activity. Finally, an incorrect approach is to store records in a format that is not readily accessible or searchable, or to have a policy of only producing records upon formal request from the OSC, without proactive internal checks. The OSC requires records to be readily accessible, meaning they should be organized and stored in a manner that allows for quick retrieval and analysis, not just retrieval after a significant delay or upon a formal demand. This lack of accessibility hinders regulatory oversight and demonstrates a failure to meet the spirit and letter of the record-keeping rules. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the specific regulatory requirements of the jurisdiction, in this case, Ontario's OSC rules, and then designing and implementing systems and procedures that demonstrably meet those requirements. This involves regular review of regulatory updates, conducting internal audits of record-keeping practices, and ensuring that technology and personnel are aligned with compliance objectives. The focus should always be on proactive compliance and the ability to provide regulators with clear, complete, and timely information. Question 17. Market research demonstrates that in the bustling trading environment of New York, a securities trader receives an incoming order for a block of shares. The trading system displays a specific market participant identifier, MPID, for this order. The trader recognizes the name of the firm associated with the MPID as a frequent trading partner, but the specific MPID displayed is one they have not seen used by this firm before. What is the most appropriate course of action for the trader to ensure compliance with FINRA regulations? Option A. Proceed with the trade, noting the unfamiliar MPID, and rely on the firm's established relationship to rectify any reporting errors post-execution. Option B. Execute the trade immediately, assuming the MPID is a new identifier for the familiar firm, and address any potential issues later. Option C. Ignore the unfamiliar MPID and execute the trade if the price is favorable, as the firm's identity is otherwise known. Option D. Verify the displayed MPID with the originating firm or internal compliance before executing the trade. The correct answer is D. Verify the displayed MPID with the originating firm or internal compliance before executing the trade. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in securities trading where a trader must accurately identify the source of an order to ensure compliance with FINRA rules regarding order handling and reporting. Misattributing an order can lead to inaccurate trade records, potential regulatory violations, and an inability to track market activity effectively. The pressure to execute trades quickly can sometimes lead to rushed judgments, making meticulous attention to detail crucial. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves diligently verifying the market participant identifier, MPID, associated with an incoming order before executing the trade. This means confirming that the MPID displayed on the trading system accurately reflects the originating firm or individual placing the order. This approach is correct because FINRA Rule 7450 requires firms to maintain accurate records of all orders, including the MPID of the participant that submitted the order. Proper identification ensures that the trade is attributed to the correct entity for regulatory reporting, surveillance, and audit trail purposes. It upholds the integrity of the market by ensuring transparency and accountability for all trading activity. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume the MPID is correct based on the trader's familiarity with the counterparty. This is a failure because it bypasses the necessary verification step. While a trader may have a long-standing relationship with another firm, systems can malfunction, or an order could be routed incorrectly. Relying on assumption rather than verification violates the principle of accurate record-keeping mandated by FINRA and increases the risk of misreporting. Another incorrect approach is to execute the trade immediately and address any MPID discrepancies later. This is a significant regulatory failure. FINRA rules require accurate reporting at the time of the trade. Delaying the correction means the initial trade record will be inaccurate, potentially leading to violations of reporting deadlines and creating an incomplete or misleading audit trail. It also hinders immediate regulatory oversight. A third incorrect approach is to ignore a minor MPID discrepancy if the trade is otherwise profitable. This is ethically and regulatorily unsound. All MPID information must be accurate, regardless of the perceived impact on profitability. Ignoring discrepancies undermines the integrity of the trading system and the regulatory framework designed to prevent market manipulation and ensure fair trading practices. It suggests a willingness to compromise compliance for short-term gain, which is unacceptable. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach to order handling. This involves a pre-execution checklist that includes verifying the MPID against the order details presented by the trading system. If any discrepancy is noted, the trader should pause execution and seek immediate clarification from the originating party or their compliance department. This methodical process ensures that all trades are executed with accurate attribution, fulfilling regulatory obligations and maintaining market integrity. Question 18. Strategic planning requires a securities trader in California to manage a significant market-on-open (MOO) order for a large institutional client. The trader is aware that the execution of this order could influence the opening price of the security. Before submitting the client's order, the trader considers several courses of action. Which of the following represents the most ethically sound and regulatorily compliant approach? Option A. Immediately inform the trading desk of the large MOO order's size and intent, and proceed with execution in a manner designed to achieve best execution for the client while minimizing market impact, potentially by breaking the order into smaller pieces if appropriate. Option B. Execute the client's MOO order immediately without any special consideration for its size, assuming the market will absorb it naturally. Option C. Place a personal trade in the same security for a significant amount just before submitting the client's MOO order anticipating the price movement caused by the client's order. Option D. Delay submitting the client's MOO order until after the market opens and the initial price action is observed to better gauge the optimal execution price. The correct answer is A. Immediately inform the trading desk of the large MOO order's size and intent, and proceed with execution in a manner designed to achieve best execution for the client while minimizing market impact, potentially by breaking the order into smaller pieces if appropriate. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it pits the immediate financial interests of a client against the integrity of the market and the firm's obligations. A trader must navigate the potential for personal gain through information asymmetry while upholding their duty to execute orders fairly and transparently, especially with large block orders that can impact market prices. The use of market on open (MOO) and market on close (MOC) orders introduces specific complexities due to their execution at the prevailing market price at the open or close, making them susceptible to manipulation or front-running if not handled with utmost care. The best professional approach involves prioritizing the client's best execution and market integrity. This means executing the large MOO order in a manner that minimizes market impact and avoids any appearance of impropriety. Specifically, this involves communicating the order's size and intent to the trading desk for appropriate handling, potentially breaking it down into smaller pieces if necessary to avoid undue price disruption, and ensuring that no personal trades are placed that could be construed as front-running or profiting from the knowledge of the impending large order. This aligns with FINRA Rule 5320, prohibition against trading ahead of customer orders, and the general ethical obligation to act in the customer's best interest, ensuring fair and orderly markets. An approach that involves immediately placing a personal trade before executing the client's MOO order is ethically and regulatorily unsound. This constitutes trading ahead of a customer order, a direct violation of FINRA Rule 5320, and is considered manipulative. It exploits privileged information about a large impending order for personal gain, undermining market fairness and the client's trust. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to execute the client's MOO order without considering its size and potential market impact, especially if it could lead to significant price dislocation at the open. While not directly front-running, a failure to manage the execution of a large order responsibly can still be seen as a breach of the duty of best execution and could lead to adverse price movements for the client, potentially violating FINRA Rule 201, best execution. Finally, an approach that involves delaying the execution of the client's MOO order to see how the market moves before placing it is also problematic. This introduces uncertainty and could lead to the order not being executed at the intended open price, potentially harming the client's execution. It also suggests a lack of commitment to the client's stated order instructions and could be seen as an attempt to gain an informational advantage for oneself or others, which is ethically questionable. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes client best execution, adherence to all applicable FINRA rules, particularly those concerning trading ahead of customer orders and best execution, and maintaining market integrity. This involves understanding the implications of order types like MOO and MOC, proactively communicating with the trading desk about large orders, and rigorously avoiding any personal trading that could create a conflict of interest or appear to exploit non-public information about client orders. Question 19. Strategic planning requires a securities trader in Ontario, Canada, to consider various trading strategies to enhance portfolio performance. While reviewing recent trades, the trader notices a pattern where they are simultaneously buying and selling the same security in large volumes across different accounts they manage, with the intention of creating a misleading impression of active trading and thereby attracting other investors. Which of the following actions best aligns with regulatory requirements and ethical conduct? Option A. Continue the trading pattern, rationalizing that the volume is not substantial enough to be considered market manipulation and that it is a legitimate strategy to generate interest in the security. Option B. Discreetly adjust the trading times and account allocations to make the pattern less obvious, while continuing the strategy to achieve performance goals. Option C. Immediately halt the described trading pattern and consult with the firm's compliance department to understand the regulatory implications and ensure adherence to securities laws. Option D. Proceed with the trading pattern, believing that as long as the trades are executed at market prices, they do not constitute manipulation, and focus on achieving the desired performance metrics. Correct answer is C. Immediately halt the described trading pattern and consult with the firm's compliance department to understand the regulatory implications and ensure adherence to securities laws. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a securities trader to balance the pursuit of profit with strict adherence to regulatory prohibitions against manipulative trading practices. The pressure to meet performance targets can create an environment where traders might be tempted to engage in activities that, while seemingly beneficial in the short term, violate securities laws and ethical standards. Careful judgment is required to identify and resist such temptations. The best professional approach involves immediately ceasing any activity that raises concerns about potential market manipulation and consulting with the firm's compliance department. This approach is correct because it prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical conduct above all else. Specifically, under the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 and FINRA rules, traders have a duty to avoid manipulative and deceptive practices. Reporting suspicious activity or potential violations to compliance ensures that the firm can investigate and take appropriate action, thereby protecting both the individual trader and the integrity of the market. This proactive step demonstrates a commitment to upholding the law and the firm's internal policies. Engaging in the described trading strategy without consulting compliance is professionally unacceptable. This approach fails to recognize the inherent risks of wash trading and matched orders, which are explicitly prohibited manipulative practices designed to create a false impression of market activity. Such actions can lead to severe regulatory sanctions, including fines and bars from the industry. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to continue the trading strategy, rationalizing that it is merely a way to test the waters, or that the volume is not significant enough to be noticed. This ignores the intent behind manipulative trading rules, which are designed to prevent even small-scale attempts to mislead the market. The regulatory framework does not provide a de minimis exception for manipulative behavior. The act itself is prohibited. Finally, attempting to conceal the trading activity or alter records to make it appear legitimate is a grave ethical and regulatory failure. This constitutes obstruction of justice and further violations of securities laws, compounding the initial offense and demonstrating a clear intent to deceive regulators and the firm. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding and internalizing the prohibitions against manipulative trading. When faced with a situation that feels ethically ambiguous or potentially violates these rules, the immediate step should be to pause, assess the activity against known prohibitions, and then proactively engage with the firm's compliance department for guidance. This ensures that decisions are made with full awareness of regulatory requirement and ethical obligations. Question 20. Process analysis reveals that an alternative trading system, ATS, operating under FINRA regulations in the United States must maintain accurate trading records. If on October 26, 2023, a specific security experienced 1,500,000 shares bought and 1,200,000 shares sold through the ATS. What is the total volume of shares traded for that security on that day? And for how long must the ATS preserve records of this trading activity, assuming the first 2 years require easily accessible storage? Option A. Total volume of 300,000 shares, preserved for at least 3 years with the first 2 years easily accessible. Option B. Total volume of 1,500,000 shares, preserved for at least 3 years with the first 2 years easily accessible. Option C. Total volume of 2,700,000 shares, preserved for at least 1 year with the first year easily accessible. Option D. Total volume of 2,700,000 shares, preserved for at least 3 years with the first 2 years easily accessible. The correct answer is D. Total volume of 2,700,000 shares, preserved for at least 3 years with the first 2 years easily accessible. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to the precise calculation and retention of trading data for regulatory compliance in the United States, specifically concerning alternative trading systems, ATS, under FINRA rules. The difficulty lies in accurately determining the total volume of shares traded for a specific security over a given period, accounting for both buy and sell orders, and ensuring this data is preserved for the required duration. Misinterpreting the calculation or retention period can lead to significant regulatory violations, fines, and reputational damage. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a comprehensive calculation of the total volume traded, which is the sum of all shares bought and sold for the security during the specified period. This approach correctly reflects the total activity on the ATS. For security traded on October 26, 2023, with 1,500,000 shares bought and 1,200,000 shares sold, the total volume is /1,500,000 plus 1,200,000 equals 2,700,000 shares. FINRA Rule 4511 requires ATSs to preserve records for at least 3 years, with the first 2 years in an easily accessible format. Therefore, the ATS must retain records of this 2,700,000 share volume for at least 3 years, ensuring the first 2 years are readily accessible. This aligns with the regulatory mandate to maintain accurate and complete trading records. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to only consider the number of shares bought or only the number of shares sold when calculating the total volume. This fails to capture the complete trading activity on the ATS, leading to an incomplete and inaccurate record. For example, only counting the 1,500,000 shares bought would misrepresent the total volume. Another incorrect approach is to calculate the net change in shares traded, e.g., 1,500,001, 200,000 equals 300,000 shares as the total volume. This calculation represents the difference between buy and sell orders, not the aggregate volume of transactions, and therefore does not accurately reflect the total market activity. A further incorrect approach is to retain the records for a period shorter than the mandated 3 years, or to not ensure the first 2 years are easily accessible. For instance, retaining records for only 1 year would be a direct violation of FINRA Rule 4511, exposing the ATS to regulatory penalties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach record preservation by first understanding the precise definition of volume as it pertains to trading activity, which in this context means the aggregate of all shares bought and sold. They must then apply the correct calculation to determine this aggregate. Crucially, they must be intimately familiar with the specific record retention periods mandated by FINRA Rule 4511, including the accessibility requirements for the initial 2 years. A systematic process of data aggregation, calculation verification, and adherence to retention timelines is essential to maintain compliance and avoid regulatory sanctions.